So, is it possible that there could be an interfaith ecological movement? In my experience, people that are religious kind of accepted that there are other religions, except for atheists. They're kind of a separate group. But could there be an interfaith ecological movement like you were just describing? Is that possible on a much larger scale than you just mentioned?
Definitely, and people are proposing this actually, so it's a great question. There's been groups who Religions for Peace is an international group, and now they're doing peace in the environment. Everyone's moving into this space. There's United Religions Initiative, and people have called for a UN type of movement of this sort. So the good news is what we, with many collaborators, have tried to identify is what are the resources in each one of the world's religions and indigenous traditions, but also this multi-religious movement that has emerged, frankly, in the last 60, 70 years. Before even Vatican II, there was a sense in the Catholic tradition there was no truth outside of Catholicism. That has shifted hugely. Interreligious dialogue has grown between all the world's religions, and now panels wouldn't even be possible on this topic of the environment without representing as many of the world's religions and, realistically. So that is an extraordinary new movement of interreligious, interfaith dialogue on the fate of the planet. And we have said for years, there's nothing more important for religions coming together if it's not for the intergenerational justice of all species, of all life. So it is pulling communities forward that formerly were not even talking to each other.
Well, to me, that you mentioned earlier, the importance of meaning. To me, that is the meaning, is the
Yes,
sacredness of our one blue-green planet that is
yes,
rotating.
yes,
Uh, and
yes,
yeah.
exactly. And I just love that. And that's why your species video is so important. And another example of this is in the Middle East, there's a group called Eco Peace Middle East, and they're working with the Abrahamic traditions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam on the Jordan River and all kinds of water issues in the Middle East. They've proposed a blue green plan, which Tom Friedman, New York Times reporters picked up on and so on. And we had a conference in Rhodes a few years back where we had representatives of all these religions and other academics who are specialists in the region. And, it was amazing, Nate. It was the first time Israelis and Muslims had been in the same room for some of them. And it was this human connection over, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if we don't have water, et cetera. So it's coming together, leaving some of the political divisions behind, and it's an extraordinary movement there.
So the groupish nature of us from an evolutionary perspective, and the tribal nature is kind of cooperation within the group and competition between other groups.
Yes,
So it's almost like in an economic story, we're competing with other tribes or other nations for resources.
yeah,
But maybe if we view the natural world as sacred, that
mhm,
might be something that we could unite around that's not a competitive
yes.
way.
Exactly, exactly. And water is just one a huge example of this. I mean, the rivers in India are considered sacred and yet they're polluted. We did a conference there on the Yamuna River and went down to the birthplace of Krishna, Vrindavan, where religious leaders are trying to work on this issue. And we also worked with hydrologists at Terry University in Delhi. And it was so interesting. Again, this personal connection, Nate. The scientists in Delhi all of a sudden on the second day we're talking about their ashrams and their religious practices, and they left behind their scientific so-called objectivity, and something new emerged, and they were like weeping with this conjunction that still has a long way to go, but it's a conjunction that's possible.